Notre Dame opted out of the bowl. Notre Dame opted out.
Not the only team this season, right? Iowa State and Kansas State.
The only team to opt out that isn't going through a coaching change.
Right.
But both Iowa State and K-State have opted out of their bowl games as well. Notre Dame, though, definitely getting, I think, a little bit more of the press on this. I'll be honest with you, it is not the best optics. It is not the best optics for Notre Dame and Pete Bevacqua and this program as a whole to sort of just cast bowl season aside. It definitely presents as sour grapes. And I'm a Notre Dame fan saying this.
Mm-hmm.
I am just as disappointed. I'm sure they are much more disappointed, being so they're in the building and I'm not. So I get that level of disappointment. Pete Bevacqua, he did an interview earlier today. We're recording this on Monday. He talked with Dan Patrick about the process. And the second they find out that there was a gigantic rug pull and they're not going to be in the playoff, that's when the phone starts ringing off the hook, different bowl invitations and whatnot. And they put it up to the team captains. And it doesn't sound like they wanted to play a game with guys who are backups. They didn't want to be out there a shell of their former self.
Yeah.
And so it is what it is. They're not going to a bowl game. Honestly, I think the biggest news that came out of that interview with Pete Bevacqua, is that there is some very obvious tension now between Notre Dame and the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
And this stems from a whole multitude of things, but the ACC was not shy about lobbying for Miami. Miami, of course, is a full member of the ACC. Notre Dame has a special agreement, a partial membership agreement with the ACC where they play 5 ACC games a year.
Right.
Sounds as if that relationship is strained. Pete Bevacqua said as much. What comes of this now is anybody's guess. I have seen wild speculation out on the interwebs that they might sue the ACC. Based on the comments I heard from Pete Bevacqua, I'm not sure anything's actually going to happen. He's like, we'll move past it, but the relationship is strained, maybe permanently damaged. What comes of this will certainly be fodder for the offseason. We are grateful, at least in that sense, that we will have content to talk about, and Notre Dame always moves the needle because you either love them or you hate them.
Right.
Where this goes next, I have no idea. But Notre Dame is none too pleased with the fact that the ACC was out there politicking for the Canes. I think they ran the Notre Dame-Miami game on loop for like 48 hours on the ACC network.
Yeah,
like that.
okay.
So,
yeah, finish. I have some thoughts. Continue.
So that I think is at least partially the source of the tension here, if there is any that exists, if you believe Notre Dame's athletic director.
Right. So, I mean, what do we know about like the timeline of this? Like, did Notre Dame the night before like all get on the same page? If we don't make the playoff, we're just out? Was it an emotional decision? I think in the sort of afterglow?
Yeah, I think part of the animus here stems from the fact that obviously the ACC was out there politicking for Miami.
Right.
But in addition to that, Notre Dame was led to believe for a month that they were in.
I agree.
They were led to believe by this stupid weekly ranking show that they had proven all they needed to prove and that they were safely in. They had talked about it in previous iterations of the Tuesday ranking show that they were being compared to Alabama, not necessarily Miami. So everything that they had been led to believe was that they were going to get in.
By
dumb. Those dudes are so dumb.
Thank you, Mikey.
You were just waiting for that one.
I was sitting.
You wanted to play it last episode.
Crouching tiger, hidden audio dropper. Continue.
You forgot about that one last time. You were upset that you didn't play it.
I didn't play that when we were talking about the committee, and it haunted my dreams last night.
But look, the committee made Notre Dame think that they were in.
Right.
And so I understand on a certain level, if you're working this from the Notre Dame angle, they were told nothing but good things for a month straight.
Right.
The people that put these rankings together can lump ESPN in there if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
They strung Notre Dame along for a month. Do you blame them for being pissed that they did the rug pull at the 11th hour? No, and he himself said, I understand it. They understand the argument for Miami. And some of the tension here that he gave voice to was not directed at any of the teams in the tournament. It was more directed at the ACC. It was more directed at the process for picking the teams involved in the college football playoff. I think separate from Notre Dame sitting out the bowl, whatever you feel from that perspective, what he gave voice to is what we gave voice to on this show and what a lot of other people have talked. Andy Staples wrote a long article on it over at On3. Notre Dame was strung along through this process. They created drama, whoever was in charge of this, by keeping Notre Dame ahead of Miami, only dropping small breadcrumbs along the way that maybe at the last second Miami could do something might occur that changes the committee's mind.
Right.
They built up this drama. They used Notre Dame to get people interested in that drama.
Right.
And then they pulled the rug on them at the last second. I get why they're pissed. I'm pissed as a fan. So that, I think, is where this conversation is going to go next from the Notre Dame side as it relates to both the college football playoff, the format in the future, and in addition, what their relationship looks like with the ACC. Because there are other sports on the Notre Dame side that are full members of the ACC.
Right.
It's not like football where they're just sort of half pregnant. If, in fact, that relationship has been strained to an extent, what do they do about that will be the next place this conversation goes.
Well, I mean, the other part of it is the punitive nature towards ESPN, because ESPN's hand in the playoff, in the messaging of everything with the reaction, or I guess it would be the release of the weekly rankings, and then the fact that ESPN runs bowl season as well, right? That what Notre Dame is doing is punishing ESPN by removing themselves from ESPN's airwaves and thus removing a ratings giant from their bowl season.
And that was Andy's point. Andy's point was he gets it from the standpoint of, okay, you used us to create all this drama. We're not going to let you use us now for ratings.
Right.
Which you could argue is a little bit petty, and maybe it is, but I get that thinking.
Right.
Like, I would probably be of similar mind if it were me.
I mean, look, we're also sort of wading into the waters of the sort of quieter part of the college football business conversation, in that there are basically two entities, and Notre Dame is not fully a part of either one of these entities, but between Fox and the Big Ten and ESPN and the SEC. And when we watch on ESPN's airwaves, Miami beat Notre Dame by 3 close, and then Alabama get absolutely demolished in front of the world the day before the playoff rankings, and have that not be affected, and have like half of the talking heads say, well, Notre Dame should join a conference so they can play in a conference championship game. And then at the same time, have Alabama play in a conference championship game and have that not affect things in the slightest. You have the same network speaking out of both sides of its own mouth. And, you know, starting the playoff selection, the final playoff selection show with just pure Alabama messaging, right? That was just like, it really had everybody on the same page with like, we all agree that Alabama should be in the playoff, and it's just not like a question about it, right? Like, and like, let's toss it to Greg McElroy and Nick Saban for their takes.
That's how it was for Herbie and Fowler.
Sure.
During the SEC championship game, and I tweeted it out, and it went crazy, and I got a lot of pushback from people, and I don't care.
Right.
But for a good chunk of that game, they were allergic, and it was more Herbie than Fowler.
Right.
Seemingly allergic to the mere idea of dropping Alabama at all. And I'm not even talking about out of the playoff.
Right.
But
the gall. Right.
The gall, right? And I know it's also been floating around that something like of the previous 16 conference championship game losers, 15 of those teams dropped in the subsequent poll.
At least one place. Yeah.
At least one spot. The only one over the last 3 years that did not even budge was Alabama.
Right.
Why is that? Let me do my Windhorse. Why do you think that is?
Shout out Brian Windhorst. Notable not SEC fan, Ohio State fan Brian Windhorst. I understand from a Notre Dame perspective. I do think it's sour grapes. Like that's the first line of this. That like, if you're thinking about your program, if you're thinking about practices and getting younger players reps and like bonding on the, traveling, and it's a road spot against, a high quality team in BYU, that there's a lot of positive to take away from Notre Dame sort of gritting its teeth and playing in this bowl game. So I think that's the first line is this is sour grapes and it's not a great look. And Notre Dame probably should have I guess they couldn't have just taken the night to think on it and sleep on it because you got to commit. But I also get it from a Notre Dame perspective where you feel as if this is an ESPN tournament that they are deciding through their own repeated messaging. I don't think the ACC network thing is a big deal. I think it's a fun tweet, Zeet on the X the Everything app, but I don't know who's watching the ACC network in earnest to pick up on what their programming rhythms are. All due respect to EJ Manuel and the fine people at the ACC network. But I get it from Notre Dame's perspective that you're the ACC should kind of have our back on a certain level, given that we play a lot of ACC games. And I get it from the ACC network thing where in the ACC messaging of Miami's our best hope, they're our best team, and we should politic.
And they're a full member.
And they're a full member.
Yeah.
That it puts them in a weird position. But I really do understand it from Notre Dame's perspective of just it does feel like an ESPN invitational that, if we play our cards right, the people who are saying that we are a clear top 10 team all season or the back half of the season will continue to think that after we don't play a game, Miami doesn't play a game, and none of the teams we collectively played play a game, and then we are bumped out. And look,
that's
the thing that I get it, but I don't know who this is truly effectively punishing other than Notre Dame's players.
I get where they're coming from.
Yeah.
I do think it's sour grapes. On some minuscule level, at a minimum, it is definitely some sour grapes going on.
Yep.
And I think the lesson learned for the committee is A, we don't need a weekly ranking show.
Yeah.
Even if you're going to do one, maybe do 3 instead of 5.
I would say, here's what you do. You do it the week before Halloween, and you do it after conference championship weekend. And you let people surmise and make guesses, but there's too many ways to paint yourself in a corner and put yourself in a box. You shouldn't do this. A mid-year check-in and a final ranking.
And if you are going to insist on doing weekly rankings, rank teams appropriately first. If you were that set and determined to put Miami ahead of Notre Dame, and I understand the argument for it. And I made the argument yesterday when we recorded. I understand it. That, to me, seems logical that Miami would get in over Notre Dame. If they're close and if one played the other, and the team that won on the field should get the spot. I'm not arguing that. But rank them that way.
Yeah.
Don't create this drama. Don't kind of talk yourself into one thing and then gradually tell us, well, with BYU losing, that bumped up Miami. They were side by side, and then we gave the tiebreaker to Miami. Did not play, and they jumped a couple spots. Okay.
Yeah.
So that in and of itself, strip out all the other context. That in and of itself is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. Look, we mentioned this before. This happened because they wanted it to happen. They wanted an ACC team in. They didn't like the look of leaving out a major conference, and they decided that Miami was more of an ACC team than Notre Dame, and they had the head-to-head to justify a very specific bump up, and they did it because they wanted to.